Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're zeroing in on something really foundational in the academic world. The power of clear communication, specifically in writing.
Yeah, crucial.
Think about it. Every breakthrough, every discovery we share, it hinges on getting those ideas across effectively. And these days, globally, that often means writing in English.
It really does. Our source today even calls it cornerstone of academic success?
And a fundamental requirement. Exactly.
And it's true. Whether you're, writing up your own research, trying to get through a student paper, or even just keeping up with your field, you need to navigate this kind of writing. And sometimes, let's be honest, it feels like cracking some kind of code.
It really can, which is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We're digging into what makes academic research papers in English, well, effective.
Okay.
We're using a great resource, Mastering the Craft, a comprehensive guide to structuring and writing effective academic research papers in English. Bit of a mouthful, but comprehensive.
Sounds like it covers a lot.
It does. So think of this as like your shortcut. We've pulled out the really essential stuff, the core insights, so you can get up to speed fast.
Okay, so our mission today is basically to unpack those core ideas, the principles, the structure.
Exactly. Give some clarity, some practical takeaways people can actually use.
Makes sense.
Because this guide, it goes into everything. Principles of academic writing, the structure,
IMRAD.
Yes, IMRAD, the classic.
Right. Academic style, building arguments, using evidence correctly. It even touches on language stuff for non-native speakers and the whole writing and revision process.
That sounds thorough.
So let's start right at the beginning. Why is this skill, writing academically in English, so incredibly important?
Well, the guide makes a really interesting point here. It's not just reporting what you found.
Right, it's more than that.
Much more. It's about constructing a logical argument, showing where your work fits in with everything else that's been done.
Situating it. Exactly, situating your work. And then you have to be really clear about your methods, present your results objectively, and then this is key, interpret what it all means.
So you're building a whole case, really, based on evidence.
Precisely. And think bigger picture. Why does this matter so much?
Well, sharing research, obviously.
Yes, it's the main way research gets out there globally. Top journals, big conferences, mostly English.
True.
Second, it's how researchers connect, build on each other's ideas. It drives knowledge forward.
Okay.
And third, honestly, career advancement. In academia, in research, strong writing is often absolutely critical.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so if it's that vital, what are the core principles? What does this guide say makes for good academic writing?
It boils down to a few key things. First and foremost, clarity and precision.
Okay, clear and precise.
The guide has this great line: the reader should never have to guess what the writer means.
Good advice for any writing, really.
Isn't it? It's like intellectual generosity. Make it easy for your reader. Use clear words, logical sentences, good organization.
Any examples?
Simple one they give. Instead of saying, due to the fact that, just say because.
Yeah. Cut the clutter. Makes sense. What else?
Next up is objectivity and formality.
Okay, so less personal opinion.
Exactly. Focus on the evidence, the logic, not how you feel about it. And use cautious language hedging, they call it.
Hedging, like not being too definitive.
Right. We'll probably touch on that again later. And maintain a formal vocabulary. Say investigate, not look into. Avoid slang, contractions. Keep it professional.
Got it. Professional distance, let the data talk.
Pretty much. Then, hugely important, evidence-based arguments.
Okay, this seems obvious for research, but what does it mean in practice?
It means every single claim you make has to be backed up by credible evidence, as the guide puts it.
So citations, your own data.
Yep. Existing literature, your findings, sound logic. You can't just state something. You need that solid foundation. The strength is in the proof.
All right, that academic rigor.
That's the word, rigor. Then there's structure and logic. Papers usually follow set formats, like that IMRAD we mentioned.
Introduction, methods.
Results and discussion, And your arguments need to flow logically, with clear links between ideas. Transitions are key.
Like building a roadmap for the reader.
Exactly like that. And briefly, the guide also mentions audience awareness, know who you're writing for.
Tailor it a bit.
Right. And of course, ethical considerations, big one being avoiding plagiarism. Cite properly, always.
Okay. And you mentioned something about non-native English speakers. Does the guide say they need to adapt differently?
It does address that, yeah. It notes that success often means adapting to these sort of Anglophone academic norms.
Like what specifically?
Things like maybe a more direct style of argument, even with the hedging.
Interesting.
Like a really strong emphasis on that evidence-based reasoning we talked about and sticking to those structures like IMRAD. These might be different from conventions in other languages or cultures.
That's a really important consideration. Okay, so we've got the principles. Let's get into the bones of it, the structure. IMRAD. Can you walk us through the sections?
Sure thing. The guide breaks it down nicely. Starts, obviously, with the title.
Okay, what makes a good title?
Its job is just to tell the reader very concisely what the paper's about. Needs to be informative, specific, use the right keywords.
Got an example.
They give a good one. The effect of peer tutoring on statistics anxiety in undergraduate psychology students.
Ah, okay. Tells you the intervention, the outcome, the population. Pretty clear. What's next?
The abstract. This is your super short summary of the whole thing.
The elevator pitch.
Exactly. The guide says it should be understandable without reading the full paper. Hits the background, research question, maybe a hint of methods, key findings, main conclusions, all really condensed. Word count is usually tight.
So read the abstract, know if the paper's relevant to you.
That's the idea. Then you get into the main body, starting with the introduction.
Okay, what's the goal here?
Set the stage, provide context. The guide talks about a funnel structure.
Funnel, like broad to specific.
Yep. Start broad, give background, narrow it down to the specific problem or gap your research tackles, and then clearly state your purpose, your research questions, maybe your hypotheses.
So why this study matters and what exactly you're asking.
You got it. After the intro, often comes the literature review. Sometimes it's woven into the intro, sometimes it's separate.
Okay. And that's where you discuss previous research.
Right. But it's more than just listing studies. The guide stresses synthesize, don't just summarize.
Synthesize, meaning?
Meaning you pull it all together, show you know the field, establish the theory behind your work, and critically analyze the existing stuff to show where your study fits in or what gap it fills. It's about joining the conversation.
Gotcha. Showing how your piece adds to the puzzle.
Exactly. So you set up the why. Next is the how, the methodology section.
This is where you explain what you actually did.
Precisely. And in detail. The guide says it's mostly written in the past tense and needs to be clear enough for someone else to judge your work's validity or even replicate it.
Replicability, yeah, that's huge in science.
It is. So you describe your design, participants, materials, procedure, your data analysis plan. Transparency is everything here.
Okay, be super clear about the how, then what? The findings.
Yep, the results section.
Yep.
This is where you just present what you found, objectively. No interpretation yet.
Just the facts.
Just the facts. The guide notes it's also mainly past tense. You might use tables, figures, but the text highlights the key outcomes.
Laying it all out there.
Right. The meaning making comes next in the discussion.
Ah, okay. This is where you explain it all.
Exactly. You interpret your results, talk about their significance, connect them back to the literature review.
See if it supports or contradicts previous work.
Yeah. You also acknowledge limitations, super important, and maybe suggest where research could go next. The guide mentions this section often mixes tenses because you're relating past findings to present knowledge and future possibilities.
Makes sense. It's the so what section.
That's a good way to put it. After the discussion, you wrap up with the conclusion.
How's that different from the discussion?
It's much shorter, more concise, just a summary of the main findings and the study's overall contribution. Key point from the guide. No new information here.
Okay, final reminder of the main takeaways.
That's it. Then absolutely essential. The references.
The bibliography, the list of sources.
Yep. Alphabetical list of everything you cited.
Yeah.
And the crucial thing, the guide says, is consistency. Pick a style, APA, MLA, whatever.
And stick to it religiously?
Meticulously, yes.
Wow.
And finally, sometimes there are appendices, optional section.
Extra stuff.
Yeah, supplementary material, raw data, detailed questionnaires, things too long for the main text.
Okay, that covers the whole anatomy. Makes sense. Now, let's shift gears a bit. The guide talks about crafting an academic voice.
Mm-hmm.
What does that actually mean?
It's about adopting that specific style expected in scholarly work. The guide breaks it down. We've already mentioned clarity and conciseness.
Right. Avoid wordiness because, not due to the fact that.
Exactly. Then formality. Use formal words, investigate, not look into. Avoid contractions, slang. Keep it professional.
Okay.
Objectivity, too. Focus on evidence. Use that cautious hedging language we talked about, words like may, might, could.
Qualify your statements.
Right. And finally, precision. Use specific language, avoid vague terms, quantify things if you can.
So it's about sounding careful, considered, authoritative, but not overstating things.
That's a really good way to describe it. Careful, considered, precise, formal, clear.
Okay. Now, a good paper isn't just a collection of facts. It needs strong arguments. How does the guide talk about building coherent arguments?
It looks at it on a couple of levels. First, the paragraph level. Paragraph structure is key.
Like topic sentences.
Yeah. Each paragraph should focus on one main idea, usually stated in the topic sentence. Then the other sentences support or explain that idea. Maybe a concluding or linking sentence at the end.
I've heard of things like peel or teal.
The guide mentions those. Point, evidence, explanation, link. Or topic sentence, evidence, explanation, link. They're just handy frameworks to make sure your paragraphs are well-developed and focused.
Useful acronyms. Okay, so that's individual paragraphs. How do you make the whole paper hang together?
That comes down to cohesion, using linguistic tricks to link ideas smoothly.
Transition words.
Transition words and phrases, definitely. However, therefore, in addition, consequently. Also, using pronouns clearly, repeating key terms strategically.
Or synonyms.
Yes, using related words, lexical chains, the guide calls it. It all helps the text flow. But ultimately, the guide says, overall coherence comes from the logical organization of the whole paper, making sure arguments build on each other clearly.
So structure at the paragraph level and structure at the whole paper level. Both matter.
They work together. Now, we mentioned evidence earlier. Using sources, this is obviously critical. How does the guide say we should integrate evidence properly?
Yeah, this is huge. Okay, so the guide first talks about when to quote, paraphrase, or summarize.
Right. Different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. Direct quotes, use them sparingly, only when the exact wording is really powerful or necessary for your analysis. Paraphrasing, putting it in your own words, and sentence structure, that's more common. And summarizing is for giving a brief overview of a larger text.
And it's not enough just to drop a quote in, right?
No way. The guide talks about effective integration. They mentioned the, quote, sandwich.
Quote sandwich. I like that. What is it?
You introduce the source or the quote first. Then you give the quote or paraphrase. And then this is crucial. You explain why it's relevant, how it supports your point.
So you frame it. Context before, explanation after.
Exactly. Don't just leave it hanging there. Weave it into your argument.
Makes sense. And the big danger zone here, plagiarism. What's the bottom line advice?
Super simple, super clear. Cite everything.
Everything.
Anything that's not your original idea, data, or specific wording needs a citation.
Yeah.
Period. And they make another really important point about paraphrasing.
Oh, yeah.
Just changing a few words. That's not enough. That's still plagiarism patch writing, they sometimes call it.
Right. You have to truly rephrase it. Different words, different sentence structure.
Totally. Understand the idea, then explain it in your own way, and still cite the original source, obviously.
Understand, rephrase, cite. Got it. Non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Now, the guide also has that section specifically on language focus for EAP learners, English as an additional language learners. What kind of common challenges does it point out?
It flags several areas that often trip people up. Things like articles, a and that. They can be tricky.
Oh, yeah.
Prepositions, too, they're often idiomatic. Verb tenses, getting subject-verb agreement right. Word choice is a big one, finding the right academic word, understanding collocations.
Collocations, words that just sound right together.
Exactly, like conduct research, not do research.
Yeah.
Also, sentence structure, using nominalization effectively.
Turning verbs into nouns, like investigation from investigate.
Right. And knowing when and how to use the passive voice. These are all common hurdles.
So what can learners do? What strategies does the guide suggest?
Several practical things. Reading a lot in your field, that's probably the best way to absorb the style and language patterns.
Immersion, basically.
Kind of, yeah. Using good learners' dictionaries that explain things like collocations and register. Focusing specifically on academic grammar guides. And really importantly, getting feedback on your writing. Specifically asking about those EAP issues.
So read, use tools, focus your learning, get feedback, sensible advice.
Very practical.
Okay, nearly there. Let's talk about the actual writing and revision process. It's not magic, right? There are steps.
Definitely not magic. It's a process. The guide outlines key stages. First, planning, outlining, organizing your thoughts.
Don't just jump in.
Please don't. Then drafting. Just getting the ideas down. Don't worry too much about perfection at this stage.
Get it on paper.
Exactly. Then comes revising. This is where you look at the big picture. Argument, strength, structure, clarity. Does it all make sense?
Stepping back a bit.
Right. After revising, you move to editing. Now you focus on the details. Grammar, spelling, punctuation, style. Polishing.
Okay.
Getting feedback is another stage, hugely valuable. Peers, mentors, supervisors. Fresh eyes see things you miss.
Definitely.
And the very last step, proofreading. That final check for typos, missed errors. The guide suggests reading aloud or even reading backwards tricks to catch things.
Reading backward. That's clever. Forces you to slow down.
It really does. So it's an iterative process. Plan, draft, revise, edit, feedback, proofread. Maybe cycle through some stages more than once.
It takes time. Okay, so wrapping all this up, what's the main message about cultivating confidence in this type of writing?
The guide really stresses patience and persistence. It takes time. It takes practice. Keep learning. Keep reading widely in your field. That helps so much with internalizing the style.
Don't expect to be perfect overnight.
Absolutely not. But the core message, the most important thing, strive to communicate your research clearly and logically.
Clarity and logic, above all.
Yes. Even if the English isn't flawless, if the argument is clear and well-structured, that's what truly matters. It's quite encouraging, really.
It is. So quick recap then. Mastering academic writing in English, it's fundamental. It involves clarity, precision, evidence, structure.
That IMRAD framework, the right academic voice, building solid arguments, using sources ethically.
Being aware of language challenges, especially for EAP learners, and following a solid writing and revision process.
You nailed it. It's a whole package of skills.
And hopefully this deep dive has kind of, distilled all that, made those guidelines feel a bit less overwhelming, giving folks a shortcut to the essentials.
Yeah, hopefully provided a clear map through it all. Which actually leads to a thought for our listeners.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking about everything we've covered, the principles, the structure, the style, which of these areas do you think might make the biggest difference to your own communication? Not just academic, maybe even professional writing generally.
That's a good question to chew on.
Maybe reflect on how you usually structure an argument or how you bring in evidence. Could any of these ideas shift your approach? Something to mull over.
Definitely food for thought. And look, if this conversation sparked something, if you want to dig deeper into, say, citation styles or paraphrasing.
Go for it.
Absolutely. We encourage that curiosity. This is a continuous learning process, right?
Yeah.
But getting these fundamentals down, that's a huge step.
A really solid foundation.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.